Welcome back now. As people across the globe observe World Suicide Prevention Day, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group has encouraged the public to reach out to its services should they feel mentally fatigued. SADAG's Operations Director, Cassey joins me now via Zoom. Cassey, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Now, I'm looking at some of these numbers, which are shocking. According to World Population Review study, South Africa ranking 10th in global suicide rates. And according to the World Health Organization, men are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than women. Talk to us about just some of the drivers behind these shocking numbers.
Absolutely. And I think when we hear these numbers, they should shock us because these numbers are people. These could be our brothers, our husbands, our sons, our next door neighbors. These are the people that we live with and see all the time. So I think that we have to remember when we hear these stats and the fact that South African men are 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women, it is significant. And I think we've just looked at the last, couple of years, looking at some of the key contributing factors to why someone may be thinking of suicide. It normally is a combination of issues. It's never just one reason or one thing. It's normally really a snowball effect that happens. We do realize that relationship issues have a huge significant contributing factor. So separation, a breakup, cheating, divorce. We also know trauma, loss, chronic illness. Financial situation is also a big contributing factor. And we often see at SADAG, our call volumes do increase when we're seeing that there's a lot of interest rate changes or people are losing their jobs, or especially during COVID when there was such an impact on employment and financial security. So when you have a combination of these issues coming together, it can be very overwhelming for an individual. If you've lost your job, it affects how you're going to look after your family. Are you going to have food? Do you have somewhere to stay? It starts to affect your relationship. All of these things come together to make someone feel incredibly overwhelmed and helpless and hopeless, and often feel like they can't find any solution to their problems. And that's when they start to think that suicide could be the only solution. I think a key thing just to bring in as well is that we know globally and in South Africa, the leading contributing factor to suicide is undiagnosed or untreated depression. So it is very important that if anyone has depression, that they do seek professional help.
I don't know how many times I've received text messages from people that I know about a teenage boy, particularly who's committed suicide at a school where there was another suicide that was reported not too long ago. I know of 4 teenage boys in a school in Welkom, for instance, who all committed suicide within a space of a couple of months. What is going on? Is this something that has always been there but wasn't widely reported? What could be the cause of it? We know, of course, we talk now about issues of mental health. Do you think that there is enough awareness around mental health? And if you can just explain what we are currently seeing at our schools, currently, particularly in high schools?
So it's really interesting when we're looking at the most at-risk age group for suicide. It's amongst our adolescents, so our teenage, our high school going learners. In South Africa, they're the highest age group that are at risk for suicide. And unfortunately, we hear about teen suicides throughout the year. There's no particular spike or increase. They're happening for a number of different reasons. And the stories that we're hearing and those that are being reported, there's so many that we're not hearing about, where there's too much shame or stigma, where they're not making the headlines, but families are dealing with these tragedies of these young people who feel like suicide is the only way to end their problems. And they don't often realize that suicide is such a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I think when we're looking at our teenagers and what they're dealing with, being a teenager is really difficult, but now also dealing with extra contributing factors, bullying, different issues happening with relationships, trauma, loss, and not having the coping skills and not having the support structure in place makes it very difficult to navigate by themselves. And this is why we're seeing so many teens in crisis. We also know that children, primary school going age, are also not immune to having mental health issues or even having thoughts of suicide. The youngest suicide in South Africa that we're aware of has been 6 years old. That's grade 1. So we can't underestimate that depression, mental health, suicide doesn't discriminate. It affects every age, every race, gender, background. And this is why it's so important that we raise awareness around this. Suicide is often a topic that's still very taboo. There's a lot of stigma surrounding it, a lot of fear in talking about it. And I think it prevents people from talking about it. And therefore, it doesn't become part of our important conversations with our children, important conversations with our friends, until we hear a tragedy. And then we're dealing with, I should have done this, I could have done this, I would have done this differently. So a way is to, as a preventative measure, is the more that we get to talk about things like depression and suicide, the more that we get to raise awareness and educate people. What are the signs and symptoms? What to do if you're worried about someone, and where to go to get help could literally save a life and prevent a family from having to deal with the tragedy, but also prevent someone who is in that space, who is feeling deeply depressed and feeling like suicide is their only option. It lets them know that there is help. And I think that's what we're really trying to do today for World Suicide Prevention Day.
I would imagine, Cassey, as we wrap up this interview, we've got very little time left. I would imagine that the uncertainty that is left behind with some families that are grieving is the question of what happened. Did I do something wrong? So what are the signs that people should look out for, particularly as you speak at, at school level, the parents, as well as the teachers?
It's so important. And I think everyone could learn the warning signs, because you never know when you're going to be looking out for them. So obviously someone talking about suicide, writing notes, posting on social media, writing goodbye messages, don't leave them, act. Ask them why, what's going on, why are you struggling? Also, signs of depression. Undiagnosed or untreated depression is a key contributing factor. So really having to look at the signs and symptoms of depression, how long have they been feeling that way? Also, a lack of interest in things that they used to enjoy. They withdraw from family and friends. You might even find with some adults, they start to give away prized possessions and get their financial affairs in order. Any of these red flags, don't wait till you tick all the boxes. If you see any flags, ask directly, really listen and encourage them to get help, whether it be through a mental health professional or even contacting SADAG at our 24-hour suicide helpline. The most important thing is to get help before it's too late.
Cassey, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. Cassey Chambers, and she is the Operations Director at the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. Of course, today we are talking about World Suicide Prevention Day.